Hey, welcome into the EnergyTech podcast presented by Offsite Energy. Today, co-host Mike Flores is joined by guest co-host Todd Smith to discuss the role of IoT and remote monitoring use cases and advancements in IoT for the energy industry. Guys, welcome in.
Hey,
glad to see you here in Canonsburg, PA.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for that intro. Yep, I'm your co-host, Mike Flores, here with Offsite. As part of the EnergyTech podcast, and here hosting with my colleague, friend, associate, and partner, Mr. Todd Smith with IDM. Todd.
Hey, Mike. Jeff, thanks for that wonderful intro.
You're welcome.
That was a long word salad for IIoT and the topics today. But welcome everybody. It'll be a great conversation to have about industrial IoT and remote monitoring. And I think about that is a lot around predictive maintenance is great for IIoT, real-time monitoring, safety and emissions, and we'll get into those things today. So
yeah, Todd, I think so, and I think to kind of maybe kick this thing off for the audience, when I talk about our audience, my assumption is that if you came here, then you're probably somebody that's either an automation tech, maybe you're an automation professional, you're an engineer, you're in instrumentation and electrical, E&I, I&E superintendent, you're maybe a director or manager of those kinds of resources in the field and into the business. So I think the first thing we want to do is maybe define what IoT even is. And in our case, because of I think the audience that we want to reach, or the folks we're talking to is industrial IoT. So the Internet of Things is very popular out there, and when if you're like someone that thinks about IoT, you might think about your refrigerator, or connecting my Roomba or something like that. I
always say I want to put something on my phone to open my garage door.
And
turn off the lights.
Yeah, so that is an IoT thing, but we're talking about large scale, scaled up industrial IoT.
Right.
This is when you're taking the devices, field devices, and systems as part of a network to take that industrial space and then make a central place of truth where you're bringing all that data in. And it starts at the edge, meaning at the field level of a device, a sensor, a controller, an RTU, those types of things, bringing the data in. So I don't know, Todd, do you kind of agree there a little bit on industrial IoT?
The edge is where our critical data is at, and that's where we want to be. But this IIoT is really going to help ultimately reduce costs, which reduce downtime, reduce decision making. You make data-driven decisions, and it's become. And I guess the point there I was trying to make is it has become or is becoming, with industrial IoT, more cost-effective to do that. Whereas previously, you might have had to manually pull that data. If we think about, roustabouts and things like that in the gas and oil industry, and they have to drive out and plug into the pump jack and pull the data, and it just hasn't been cost-effective, right?
Yeah. So you're listening in. That's our definition of industrial IoT or IoT when you talk about that. Now let's talk about kind of, Todd, maybe the relevance in the energy space, because this is a big deal. IoT in manufacturing, when you look at that market, is very big. I think manufacturers are doing a lot of different things to bring in industrial IoT, to implement other things, and so you have energy. Yep. So which encompasses a lot of different things. When we say energy, we don't always just mean oil and gas. What we're really talking about as well is anyone that's doing renewable energies, anyone that's doing nuclear power, anybody that is doing wind or solar or any type of technology that turns itself into a usable energy source is really what we're talking about in relation to IoT, right?
And cost-effective devices to get it from the edge into some sort of data lake, so you can make your decisions based on that information, as opposed to getting delayed decisions costs money.
Yeah. So when you relate that to energy, in my mind, I think of things in terms of, you're right. So you mentioned kind of monitoring equipment, improvement in efficiencies that you want to do, reduce downtime or kind of enhance. You talked a little bit about safety. And so I think what we want to do here is maybe target a little bit of some of maybe products and things that are shaping industrial IoT, right? And what we can see that's happening in the industry right now, because, I've been in this a little bit, and, I've seen a definite change where producers, we'll pick on oil and gas. Oil and gas producers want to get away from 1980s style polling cycles of pulling data and only collecting and collecting every 15 minutes or 1 hour, right?
Yeah, the 80s were great for rock music, but they were horrible for serial radios in the field. I get your point.
Yeah. So to me, that's one industry. I think the other one is when you start talking and combining electrical providers, nuclear providers, and other forms of energy. They don't have the same budget that a super major has. So you and I in our careers have spent time around super majors. And if you don't know who they are, they're the large folks like Exxon, BP, Chevron, fill in the blanks, okay? Those are your super major folks. If you're doing an industrial IoT project, it's easy to hide $1 million proof of concept with them and maybe bring something to reality. But when you're a renewable energy producer, you have a smaller budget, you have a shorter time to value, and what you want to do is you want to create a proof of concept, but it can't overblow a budget. So I think when I think of industrial IoT and energy space, that is what I think you can look to and target because of recent, in my opinion, which are recent improvements in not just the edge equipment, but the cost.
Yeah, the cost, and we keep that buzzword of IIoT, so the industrial side of those things. And you make a good point about the ability to go and do proof of concepts with lower cost equipment, but then that reduction or that efficient cost cycle you went through to do a POC, now you can spread that through the entire project, whereas the traditional instrumentation, that's becoming a very competitive market space with IIoT out there these days. So you don't have to buy a $3,000 transmitter anymore to look at a tank level. Now you can spend a couple $100, and that's huge.
Right. And so let's kind of target something here. So for the listeners, in case you didn't know, Todd is the founder of IDM, Industrial Data Management.
Thanks for the plug.
Yeah, there you go. So IDM is
be something extra in your paycheck next week.
So IDM is a systems integrator that's been around since about 2008, with experience working with oil and gas and energy partners. That's the bread and butter of the organization, and focuses on implementing IoT initiatives for oil and gas, renewable energy, and energy partners that are out there both in the field and at the plant level. So you've got quite a lot of experience. And I want to pick on a project, Todd, that you did about a year and a half ago. And this was for a regional producer in Port Arthur, Texas. And so this company was basically moving animal fats to a refinery, and they have to batch this product and then get it over to the refinery to be produced as renewable diesel, where it's ultimately placed on rail cars, trucks, and such, and shipped out. Right? And so one of the challenges of this project were a couple of things. Number one was the time constraint. Right. The project had some really cool carrots to it, and it required the time to be cut from about an 18-week sprint down to about 6 weeks. Right. So you had to kind of get this facility up and running. It was live. You had rail cars here that were moving, and you had to be able to collect data in real time. Right. You had to be able to take that same data and then push it to different user types. This included field teams. This included maintenance groups, operations folks, and then finally, you needed to report that information up to groups like the Internal Revenue Service, believe it or not, for
exactly.
For batching and tax purposes. The final thing that you had to do on that project was implement mobile applications that required true pane of glass visibility for everybody, because you're moving rail cars while at the same time you're moving product and you're batching totals and you're doing all kinds of different things. And that in and of itself was a true IoT project that you couldn't do a proof of concept. You were parachuted in behind another systems integrator, and you had to do it. So in your mind, I said a lot, but tell me in your mind, like, hey, this is an IoT project. What were three main things you think IDM did on that project that brought about what we're even talking about in terms of IoT?
Well, before answering that, I'd like to circle back just a little bit to the IoT and how it really was impacted by, or that project was impacted by IoT. So we had a lot of devices that were manual or seemed impractical to engineer with the traditional, industrial items. So we were able to go look at small IoT or IIoT devices for car levels, real-time positioning of cars, reading card readers. That technology out there is kind of locked down, or it's there's some primaries in that market that charge an extraordinary a lot of money. So we had budget constraints and we had time constraints, and to get from again, we talked about earlier, proof of concept to production in such a short ramp time, we had to leverage some pretty neat devices. And the point I really wanted to make on that is that was my eye-opener experience of low-cost industrialized devices that allowed us to do that. So that was one of those three things, was definitely getting some industrialized, reliable devices and in place and be able to do the things that traditional devices did. And I love that market space these days because it's very creative, open. There's a lot of vendors coming up with really cool ideas and putting cost-effective industrialized products on the market. So the other thing we had with that is we had to get data. So as an organization, when we grew up since 2008, we really focused on data, right? We have all type of expertise inside the company. We're a technology firm, but data is really at the core of everything.
Right.
And so we had to realize that data pretty quickly. And so our challenges there on that project were really overcoming the hurdles of the traditional products on the market that weren't able to be flexible, weren't able to implement quickly. You had to have a level of technical expertise or a degree in their product just to get it to work or produce reports. So that was the other big thing, is leveraging products that were cost effective that allow us to do real-time reporting.
Yeah, so you had some challenges. You alluded to one, which is you have these large-scale SCADA DCS providers.
Yes.
And what they offer is a paywall product. That means that you pay a large amount of money to get even the training, to set this product up. And there's a few that are out there. And so I know coming into this project, what you did differently is you stood up Ignition right alongside this large paywall SCADA / DCS beast of a product.
I was going to say monster, but beast isn't appropriate.
So these large products that take lots of resources.
Oh, yeah. So that and you just made me think about something. I don't mean to get off in the weeds on that, but those large beast products, as an example, it took 9 VMs on 2 servers, hundreds of thousands of dollars just in computer equipment to run from their SCADA to their SQL historian to even their tools for reporting was all on a different server. And then you had to have servers to manage the servers, as opposed to having a product like Ignition.
So then what you do is you stood up Ignition live, stood it up, side by side, integrated that into the PLCs and the devices that are there for measurements, tank levels. So you connect to tank levels, you connect to batching systems, you connect it to rail car data, and you did that first with implementing Ignition, standing that up. You didn't have the same paywall. You download it, you get it started. Within days, within hours actually, you connect, you bring in the tag data, and then from there, I know that you start implementing each piece that matters for that organization to have a seamless way to bring in rail cars, get the rail cars to batch, get that batch tracked and traced, deliver that, and then at the same time, in real time, generate reporting, tickets, and mobile applications. So that was a testament to a product like Ignition against a paywall beast of a product. That was win number one. And then on that project, I think win number two, or what the value was, I use the word win, but the value really was also the implementation of true IoT devices like OnLogic, the folks at OnLogic, the folks at Banner, that give you true IIoT connectivity with their products.
Right. So, and if I might circle back to the SCADA piece, and I wouldn't necessarily think of, I personally don't think of Ignition as an IoT quote unquote product. However, compared to the beast of the products on the market, it's extremely cost effective. However, it is completely geared towards IoT. The gateway network it's their back-end network that talks SCADA to SCADA on their own platforms. That is an IoT protocol, as an example. So they had the foresight to jump on the IoT bandwagon years and years ago. I've been working with that product forever, and we're proponents of it mostly because it makes us successful.
Yeah, so I think that, so IoT, and I'm going to take this from a guy that I like to really watch and follow is Walker Reynolds with 4.0 Solutions. He kind of breaks down, or he does break down, the four main things that make up true IoT, and that is that it is lightweight, open architecture, report by exception, and edge-driven. And I think of that project in Port Arthur, Texas. It hits the notion of each four of those points, right?
It does.
And you already had the challenges of connectivity. You had the challenges of the dollars that were already spent on that project to take these large paywall product and get it to work. And at the end of it, nothing was integrated when you got there.
Yeah.
And
those larger products are not. They're not friendly to the edge devices, right? So you have to go through some intermediate solution often to get that data.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's built into their product, but it's still a spin-off, right? It's something else you have to configure. Like I got to configure a tag server for these type of devices or whatever it might be.
Yeah. So when you that was almost a year and a half ago, and so much has changed even between then and now in terms of what we can do with industrial IoT.
Yeah, that 6-week mark we'd probably take down to 3 weeks or 2 weeks at this point. With the way the technology is changing.